सही बोला.
So this this is more or less just going to be a video for our Hindi audience.
Casual
I
maxers.
I may as well, yeah, philosophy maxes, philosophy sells. I might as well just translate what he's saying for you as well. तो भाई आज हम लोग डिस्कस तो करने वाले थे इस चीज़ को कि बुद्धिज़्म डिसएग्री करती है या नहीं वेदास के साथ ना. मैं पहले अपनी बात रखता हूँ क्योंकि मेरा चैनल है.
मेरे को लगा हम बीपी पे बात करेंगे भाई. ये हम किस भाग घोषणा कर रहे हैं वीडियो में.
अबे मज़ा नहीं आएगा. कम ऑन मैन, इट वाज सपोज्ड टू बी discussion about philosophy from the very beginning.
Okay, fine. Let's talk in English.
Bro, I sometimes forget that he can speak in English. भाई मतलब literally हमेशा मेरे को English में ही लिखता रहता है. He quite literally always.
I studied from ICSE board, bro. I know a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I forget that. Like too much. Same. Might as well discuss something about me and my life later on in this video. So we're going to discuss if Buddhism is really all that different from Brahmanism, or is it like a made-up sort of idea, that it's very different. So I've always thought it's mostly the Navayana Buddhists or the Neo-Buddhists who pushed this idea of Buddhism being this revolution against the Vedas. But really, when you look into some of the texts of Buddhism, it's not that. It may be true that some Vedic rituals have been opposed. Those flashy rituals which invited a lot of people. But then again, you notice, Vedas don't really talk about flashy rituals. The Vedas, the original Veda, was written by a nomadic people who had simple lives. So when Buddha is talking about return to a simple life without those flashy offerings to gods, then he is basically just talking about early Vedic life. Not he is rejecting later Vedic teachings, but he is not necessarily rejecting early Vedic teachings.
Let's talk point to point. Like you mentioned Brahmanism. To be honest, I don't like that term. That's a very colonial term to refer to Hinduism as something that is very oppressive and dominated by the Brahmins. I actually don't like it. It's very colonial.
I'm not mentioning Brahmanism in that sense. I'm talking about belief in that entity called Brahman, not Brahman.
The word that leftists use as Brahmanism is actually attacking a certain caste that then attack the whole religion. I
think what that actually means is belief in that supreme entity or Brahman, that monotheistic entity.
The way the white colonizers and then the leftists use this term, it is to demean this religion. That's the whole point. It is not about referring to the Brahman, the entity itself. So let's talk about Neo-Buddhists first. Neo-Buddhists are not even Buddhists. They don't even know what Buddha actually taught, what Buddhism is. All they know is about Ambedkar this, Ambedkar that. To be honest, they don't even read his books or his writings. They're just, enraged, politically misled people. Some people are meant to clean gutters. They are one of them. We can't do anything.
And this is not talking about their caste or profession. Some people are
just. We're not talking about caste system. Some people are
not talking about their caste or profession, but some people are just bound to be misled for.
Some people are so low IQ that they can't do any functionally good to society. And I'm not referring all new Buddhists like that, but I think majority of them are like that, like 99.9%. Coming back to Buddha, the Vedic religion describes that there are two Buddha. The original one was ninth avatar of Vishnu. So that guy came and misled the dharmic people away from the dharma. And then there's a second Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. He was the king who left his nobleship and then went towards the path of salvation and whatnot. So the thing is,
here's another thing. I don't think when Buddhism talks about Buddha himself, they actually believe that Buddhas are born from time to time. So that ninth, the guy who's
Nah,
considered the ninth
that
avatar of
actually
Buddha,
depends
of
which type
Vishnu,
of
he's also considered a Buddha. And Buddhism also admits that only in Brahmin or Kshatriya families are Buddhas ever born.
Kshatriya.
Yeah.
Actually, that Buddhas are reborn from time to time. It's a very, regional and a specific sect like of Buddhist thing. It is not a very, widespread and every single Buddhist agrees on it. That's the thing. I think it's Tibetan Buddhism that believes in this. I personally think. I think Indian Buddhists usually the major ones don't believe in such
Indian
things. They
Buddha,
believe
there is
that
no such thing as Indian Buddhism left. Indian Buddhism fucking died 800 years ago.
you can say that original sects and their original philosophy died long back, but culture always evolves, philosophy always evolves. You can argue that it died, but in some form or the other it evolved, or some form or the other it preserved
Now,
itself.
I've sent you
There are
I've
different
sent you a few
sects.
texts. I've sent you a few
Yeah.
texts where Buddha does talk about these Vedic deities, right? He does not reject those gods, right? These are Buddhist texts. So this idea that Buddha rejected Hindu gods is kind of false to begin with.
No, that is not false to begin with. I already mentioned that there were two Buddhas. Even if you don't believe in this thing, because it's a very Hindu text, Hindu scriptural thing, then also you can see the duality in Buddhism, that at one point the Buddha, let's for the sake of argument, let's consider Buddha as a dual person. It would be very easy. So let's talk that why Buddhist talks about gods and other place they don't. See, Buddha is a very dual person. At one place he talks about suffering, salvation, and there is no God etc. And other place the Buddhist scriptures talks about casteism. They have a very deep rooted casteism and discrimination in their scriptures. Other he talks about there are gods, but those gods are lesser than Buddhas. You can actually see that Hindu gods are placed below the foot of Buddha in some of the Buddhist temples. You can search online. So Buddhism is like that only. At one place, Buddhists claim themselves that they are non-violent, they don't kill animal. But the ironical part is, if the animal died of natural causes or something like that, they can eat it. So what Buddhist monks
No,
actually
I
do,
kind
they
of
tie a
understand
goat.
where this comes from. I understand where this comes from. It's probably from Theravada Buddhism, right? In, in fact, in Theravada
See,
Buddhism, in
it
certain
really
parts of the
doesn't
world, you
matter.
can actually consume meat. In fact, there's a tradition in Southeast Asia which believes that Buddha died by eating pork, right? The meat of a pig or something like that, which was unhealthy, which was diseased. There's a belief like that. Now, this probably isn't true, but this is probably a story written up by that regional culture. But yeah,
See,
some Buddhist
see, the
cultures too.
thing is, it really doesn't matter which sects of Buddhists we are really talking about. That's the point. Apart from neo-Buddhist and some modern Buddhist cults, all those Buddhist cults are like more or less same. Like there can be philosophical difference, there can be sectarian difference, but at the end of the day, they are Buddhists, like Hindus, like Shaivites and Vaishnavites. They are essentially Hindus. They can have a little bit of conflict here and there. So the thing is,
But
those
again,
Buddhist monks
but
used to tie those animals and then throw them from a high altitude position. They hit rock and they die, and they used to consume their meat. And at the same place, to talk about non-violence, it is a very dual thing to say, doglapan.
um, also, here's the funny thing. You would actually look at a lot of royal families where the father would be Buddhist and the son would be Vaishnavite. And again, that guy's son could be of a completely different religion. You look at the Mauryas, you look at the Kushans. So I really doubt if Buddhism back then was considered like a different religion, but more like just a different path to God, just the same same religion but different group. Like Ashoka's dad was quite literally an atheist or something like that. It was a atheistic philosophy which he followed. And then there's another good example of Vasudeva, the Kushan king Vasudeva. He was Hindu, he was Vaishnavite, but all of his like his father, grandfather, all of these guys were Buddhists. So the argument which I make is Buddhism was probably not this different religion altogether like people present this today. In fact, there's plenty of historic documents which would point to that in particular, right? Like Dharma Swami, there was this guy who visited India from Tibet. He was in Mithila. He was actually offered to be the court Brahmin by the king of Mithila. What he also noticed was, after the Nalanda University was recovering from the ravages of the Turks, the last Brahmin was actually the last monk was being taken care of by Brahmins. Rahul Sribhadra, that guy, and these ideas of Hindus and Buddhists having conflict is kind of, I would say you kind of fell for it as well. Like when they mention Pushyamitra Shunga committing genocides of Buddhists, I don't really think that's true, because the book which mentions this happening was written 300 years after the Mauryas and the Shungas. 400 years after the Great Maurya Empire and 300 years after Pushyamitra Shunga. That is not a great
You
source.
know, the way you are narrating all these stories, like most secular people narrate that there is a unity between Hinduism and Islam. It's so funny. Like, I like to clarify one thing: the Hindu noble kings were very tolerant toward other religions and other religious people. Like, very, very tolerant. Same happened with
Wait,
Buddhism
also
and
listen to
Jainism.
me. There's this idea that Pushyamitra attacked Buddhists partly because the Greeks had invaded India after the fall of the Maurya Empire. And these Greeks happened to be Buddhists. So Pushyamitra Shunga, when he led the counterattack, he might have had to kill some Greeks who happened to be Buddhists. So yeah,
Okay,
along that path, it might be true that some of their buildings might have been destroyed, but it's not that their stupas were specifically targeted. I don't think it was
okay,
just their stupas. It was
okay. Let me refute. Let me
their,
refute from point to
everything
point.
was destroyed. Everything in their domain was destroyed. And yes, there
अरे मेरे
might
को तो
not have
बोलने दो
been.
भाई. मेरे को तो बोलने दो.
Yeah, carry on.
See, the thing that you mentioned, that Hindu kings were atheists also. The kings were atheists or Buddhists and their children turns Vaishnavas, or the Vaishnavas and Shaivites exist and their children went towards Buddhism or Jainism. The thing is, Hindus were very tolerant to other religions back then also. And I think till now they are like that. And it's a very, very, very wrong thing that this community harbors actually. The thing is, nobody bats an eye back then like what you are doing or what you're not doing in noble families, because you are literally successor of that kingdom. Some kings might have an issue, but largely none have them. And the thing is, succeeding from, let's say that you were Hindu first and then your children became Buddhist and or something else, that's completely their matter. It's none of like anything like actually changed. The thing is, even in Mauryan Empire, when the kings were Buddhist or anything, the court remained Hindu. The court were Hindu, their official language was Sanskrit, and Hinduism thrived under it. But at the same time,
You know
there
the
were
reason?
Buddhist
No,
kings.
there's a reason. There's actually a reason that Sanskrit remained the court language beyond just Hinduism. I tell you, beyond just any religion, because
भाई
when
भाई
you
मेरे
have
को
such a
point by
diverse,
point
when you have
बोल
such a diverse
पहले
group of
उसके
people.
बाद तो अपने point रख. पहले मेरे को point by point तो बोल लेने दे. उसके
All
बाद
right,
मैं
all
अपने
right, all right. This happens with me a lot because भूल जाऊंगा ना बाद में ये वाला point.
हाँ, नहीं तो फिर दिक्कत ये हो जाएगी ना कि तेरे 10 पॉइंट हो गए, मेरे 1 पॉइंट का आया, फिर बाकी लोग सोचेंगे कि 9 पॉइंट गए कहाँ. The second point that you mentioned, देख मेरे को अभी भी याद नहीं आ रहा तूने क्या बोला था आगे की कहानी. The second point that you mentioned, that Buddhism and Hinduism are not different from each other, it's a part. The thing is, the Buddhists used to wake up every day and spit and abuse that they are fortunate that they are not born Hindu. This is something that is mentioned in Hindu history and Hindu scriptures. In Hindu scriptures and Hindu history mention Shastrarth, the debate between scholars of both religion, in which the Buddhists were defeated and their philosophy were diminished by the Vedic people. So, in that part of history, there are a lot of context and a lot of things that people usually ignore. That contains the rise of Buddhism. In the rise of Buddhism, when Buddha rejected Vedas, a lot of people turned against the Vedic religion. Sooner or later, those people, by the order of Buddha
Well,
and his philosophy.
here's the thing. जल्दी से एक चीज मैं ऐड कर दे रहा हूँ. I think this is a misconception that Buddha was fully against the Vedas. That is my point. You might disagree with it. Buddha was asked by a minister in his home state that what is something that a nation should do, an empire should do if they have to succeed. Buddha said that they have to return to tradition. Buddha did not declare Buddhism as some kind of reform movement, like, or something like that. He also said that Buddhas are all only born to Kshatriya and Brahmin families. So of course, there is some debate with this. It's likely that later on there was friction among those groups, because they wanted patronage from kings. So that was the reason that they had friction among themselves. But mostly, I think it was not Buddha himself.
Uh, no, I think you are like misinterpreting history. And it's very funny actually. See, the first thing that you mentioned, that a guy in the court asked about Buddha this and that. Buddha was a very dual person. He said something and he did something. He did something and he said something. He was like Osho actually. Like he said so much and did so much that it is very contradictory. And Buddhists also face that in their different sects. That's why you see some Buddhists eating meat, some saying it is non-violence, because Buddha propagated his philosophy in such a manner that it's very contradictory to each other. The main thing is that
I have a
actually
different thing.
advocated against the Vedic religion. He advocated against the Vedic religion, but the ironical part is he picked those verses from Vedic religion that he condemned. The Buddhists condemned Manusmriti, but they have upholded verses from Manusmriti that is literally ditto same, or maybe here and there a little bit words are different.
Yeah, I've
It's
noticed
literally the
something
same
like
thing.
that as well. Like they often talk about casteism. I distinctly remember reading a Buddhist text which talked about how if a Buddhist saw a Chandal, his entire day was ruined, or something like that.
Yes, absolutely yes. This is the duality of Buddhists. They are more, they harbor hate towards Hindus actually, and you can actually see that they criticize Hinduism but copied it. They criticize the Vedic Dharma but copied it. They criticize the casteism but copied it. To be honest, casteism is not part of Hinduism, and the Varna Ashram Dharma clearly states that those who do believe in that their varna is supreme and others are inferior do fall from their varna and they become shudras, or maybe they lost their varna entirely. So the nastikas like Buddhists were really discriminatory, but they blamed Vedic
Well,
religion
yes,
for it.
yeah. There's also another thing which is very interesting. When the Hunnic king Mehirkula, when he invaded India, it's common practice among the nomads, like the Mongols, the Huns, the Turks, that when they invade some region, they actually try to understand their religious practices instead of absolutely destroying them, like the Muslims or Christians tend to do. So he wanted to learn about Indian religion, and what the Buddhists did was they humiliated the shit out of him and sent him the lowest ranking official to teach him about Buddhism. And this pissed him off, and the Hindus, they respected him as a king. Yeah, he was a mlecha, but he was a king. He was their king at that point of time, so he deserved that respect. And he had won via might, and might has to be respected. And he converted to
To be
Shaivism.
honest,
He converted.
Malik shouldn't be respected no matter what he is or what he does. पहली सीधी बात ये है.
All right. He
Second thing,
converted. Listen to me. He converted to Shaivism. He converted to Shaivism, and then
then he is one of us. बात खत्म हो गई.
he converted to, like, listen up. There's something interesting. There's a narrative in history which people often throw around. So Mehirkula converted to Shaivism, and then he went on to destroy Buddhist monasteries because the Buddhists had humiliated him. Now people often claim that it was his conversion to Shaivism which caused him to destroy these stupas. In reality, it was the misbehavior from the Sangha which caused him to lash out. It was not his conversion to Shaivism itself. He wanted to know about every single religion in the beginning.
See, just getting converted in a particular sect of a faith does not like pushes anyone to destroy anything. Something happened, then he reacted. That's the whole case. That's what I am pointing for.
This is
like a lot, for
like
a lot
his
of
example is often pointed out by left-leaning historians.
time. By the leftists hate the idea of India, and anything that synchronizes with this idea is hated by them.
I
It is
think
as simple.
whatever the differences, but by and large, I believe whatever the differences between Hinduism and Buddhism were, I think Hindus and Buddhists, in their daily life, they may have scorned at each other, whatever, but it was never like the friction between the Muslims and the non Muslims as it would happen in the future. It was simply not comparable,
See,
right?
the actually Buddhists were not as much as violent as like Abrahamics, that they will go and kill everyone. Like they did that actually, they kill people, specifically the Hindu scholars and other people. But still, they were much more like doing shastras and like those things, much more like that, which the other faiths rejected simply. Like the Churchill once said that while the Hindus sharpen his argument, the Muslim sharpens his sword.
Yeah, so this is getting too long.
हाँ जा रहा है. Like let me talk about Shunga for a while. See, Shunga killed Badrinath because Badrinath refused to uphold his duty as a king. Shunga then ascended. Yes, Shunga then took throne, and I think he won fight against Greeks. After that, he has destroyed several stupas,
No,
and he
listen,
killed a
listen.
lot
This
of
is the
Buddhists.
misconception about Pushyamitra. The reason he destroyed stupas and not temples is because the domain he attacked was inherently a Buddhist domain. It was not a campaign against Buddhists. He did not destroy stupas in his own domain. उसका कोई proof नहीं है. Did he destroy stupas in Bihar? Did he destroy stupas in Bengal, where his empire was? He did not. He destroyed the stupas in the more northwestern parts of India, where he was leading a counterattack against the Greeks. And the riders, the Buddhists who were patroned by those Greeks, wrote that stuff against him. He did not hold any hatred against Buddhists. In fact, his son um, enlarged and decorated the Sanchi Stupa.
Well, this particular part of history is very much distorted, and like you literally can't know who's telling the truth. The left always portrays Shunga as some barbaric Brahman who killed Buddhist, blah blah blah, and then his son like went towards Buddhism, and the right is
No, he did
always
not
like,
even
nah,
go
he's a
towards
beast
Buddhism. He
Brahman.
did not even convert to Buddhism. He just helped them build those structures. And there are many such examples. The Khajuraho, and I'm not. I'm talking about the wrong stuff, right? Those Jain temples in southern India, which Hindu kings from the Rashtrakuta Empire had built, right?
What's your point?
I mean that by and large, Hindus and Buddhists did not have conflict. They might have had differences, but they were not at conflict.
I think by and large, because back then community was very widespread and most people didn't had like some social media kind of thing, so not much radicalization back then among those groups. But I think on a very academic level, scholarly level, they both hated each other, and you can witness that through any of the Buddhist scriptures or the Hindu scriptures. And this is a very valid proof actually that those Buddhists and even the Hindus acknowledge in their academic circles.
But again, you have to consider
By
that.
large, maybe society didn't fought with each other regularly, but on a very philosophical scale, they did. It was actually like the scholars of both community were trying to influence the king and convert him so that their religion and their philosophy can
Yeah,
get
exactly.
an
This is
upper
something I
hand
was
in the
trying to get
society.
across a little bit earlier when I said they were vying for the patronage of the king.
Yeah, like every single religion tries to patronage. But
Yeah,
the thing is, when Buddhists actually ascended in patronizing the king, they were on a rampage of mass conversion and then creating of stupas, and then Vedic age and decline. Bro, this is very basic Indian history, if you know.
but again, how much do you think is the difference between Buddhism and Hinduism? I don't think,
A lot.
I don't
We
think,
both are different.
it's a lot, but I wouldn't say it's a lot to the point where they can be considered two different religions. Like the thing which is called Hinduism and the thing which is called Buddhism, they might have differences, of course, sure, but they to an extent have an overlap where they worship the same deities.
Bro, they had overlapped actually because they both were brought up in a very same culture. That's the whole point. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है they were both equal और या फिर दोनों एक ही साथ थे.
And at no point of time did one try to completely
It's actually
eradicate the other.
cultural similarity. It's cultural similarity.
I think these two resemble like the two farthest branches of a single religion. Two farthest
And
branches.
no,
Almost seems like
absolutely
they're
not.
a different religion.
Absolutely not. They are literally two different religions. Like the Buddhists literally rejected the Vedas, the worships of the gods and goddesses. Even if they acknowledge those gods, it's always like there's some Buddha or some anything Buddhist figure, and the Hindus gods at their feet. You can literally search on Google. They were literally two different religions to begin with.
Okay, that is true, but again, you can also do the same thing with early Hinduism and later Hinduism. Like
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
early Hinduism did not have a concept of Brahman like the supreme entity. In fact, the Rig Veda kind of leans towards agnosticism and
Nah, it
agnostic
doesn't. Nah,
polytheism.
it's a very misconception. No, it's a very basic
Like
misconception. Those who don't know about
it's an
dharma.
agnostic polytheism. The Rig Veda
Bhai,
understands that
absolutely not. Bhai, absolutely not. Bhai, it's a misconception. The people quote, I don't remember which verse from Rigved, but people quote that and say like, here was a rishi who was like talking in a very agnostic manner. Actually, he is not. He's criticizing it. He's upholding that there is a God.
like go ahead and check chapter 10 verse 129 of Rig Veda.
अरे भाई मैं नहीं करने वाला हूँ मुझे मालूम है that what you are quoting is wrong. भाई
The-
I have heard this from
he talks
acharyas
about
themselves.
did you hear what I just mentioned? He talks about agnostic polytheism. He doesn't say that the gods are not real, but he says that there was something before the gods as well, and we can never know that what there was before the gods. And if that Brahman
And
doesn't know that, then nobody knows.
like you are saying that something mentioned like there was something before God and that is hidden in Vedas.
Yeah, there was something before gods,
ना
but
that is one of the most wrong. भाई इतना गलत कैसे कोई translation कर सकता है? That is literally wrong, भाई. The Vedas themselves said that there was a Adi Purusha. That's it, भाई.